The sun was just starting to peek over the hills when Jake heard the dogs barking. It wasn't their usual morning bark. This was different. Urgent. Something was wrong. Jake pulled on his boots and stepped out onto the porch of his ranch house. The Double R Ranch stretched for miles in every direction, nothing but rolling hills and cattle as far as the eye could see. He'd lived here for 15 years now, ever since he got back from his time in the military. The peace and quiet helped calm his mind after everything he'd seen overseas. But this morning the peace was broken. He followed the sound of the dogs toward the old barn. As he got closer, he could hear something else, quiet sobbing. Jake slowed his steps, his military training kicking in. Someone was hiding in his barn and they were scared. "Hello?" he called out softly. "Anyone there?" The crying stopped immediately. Jake waited, listening. After a long moment, he heard a small voice whisper, "Please, please don't hurt me." Jake's heart clenched. It was a young woman, and she sounded terrified. He put his hands up even though she couldn't see him yet. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. "My name is Jake. This is my ranch. Are you okay? Do you need help?" Silence stretched between them. Then slowly, a figure emerged from behind, a stack of hay bales. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair and clothes that were torn and dirty. There was dried blood on her arm and she was shaking like a leaf. "Sir," she said, her English broken but understandable. "Sir, please don't let them take me." Jake stayed perfectly still, not wanting to scare her more. "Who's trying to take you?" The girl's eyes darted around like she expected someone to jump out at any moment. "Bad men, they make me work. I run away. They come for me." Tears started flowing down her cheeks again. "Please, sir, I have nowhere to go." Jake had seen enough in his 45 years to know when someone was telling the truth. This girl was running from something terrible and she needed help. His mind started racing, thinking about what he should do. "What's your name?" he asked. "Isabella," she whispered. "Isabella Morales." "Okay, Isabella. Let's get you inside and cleaned up. We can figure out what to do from there." But Isabella shook, her head frantically. No, they find me. They always find me. I should go. I should not bring trouble to you." She started backing toward the barn door, but Jake could see she was barely standing. Whatever she'd been through, she was exhausted and hurt. "Wait," Jake said. "When's the last time you ate something?" Isabella stopped. Her hand went to her stomach and Jake had his answer. "Come on," he said. "At least let me make you some breakfast. Then we'll talk about what happens next." Isabella hesitated for a long moment. She looked at Jake's face, searching for something. Maybe she saw something trustworthy there, because she finally nodded. As they walked to the house, Isabella told him pieces of her story. She'd come from a small village in Guatemala. Her family was poor, and when men came offering her work in America, it seemed like a dream come true. They promised her a job in a restaurant, good pay, a place to live. But when she got to Texas, everything changed. There was no restaurant job. Instead, they locked her in a house with other girls and forced them to work in fields for no pay. The conditions were horrible. No proper food, no medical care, and if anyone tried to escape, they were beaten. "I tried to run before," Isabella said as Jake made her eggs and toast. "They catch me. This time I think maybe I die trying. Better than staying." Jake's jaw tightened as he listened. He'd heard about human trafficking before, but hearing it firsthand from someone who'd lived it made his blood boil. These weren't just criminals. They were monsters. "How did you end up here?" he asked. "I walk for 2 days. I hide during day, walk at night. I see your fence, your animals. I think maybe I rest for a little bit, then keep going. But I'm so tired." Jake set a plate in front of her and watched as she ate like she hadn't seen food in days. She probably hadn't. "Isabella," he said carefully, "these men who are looking for you, do you know how many there are? What they look like?" Fear flashed in her eyes again. 3, maybe 4. The leader, his name is Victor. He has scar here. She touched her cheek. "He very dangerous man. He hurt people who cross him." Jake nodded, filing away the information. And you think they're still looking for you? Yes, Isabella said without hesitation. Victor, he no let anyone go. He say we belong to him until we pay back what he spent to bring us here. But the debt, it never gets smaller. Always more money. We owe. Jake knew enough about these operations to understand. It was a trap designed to keep people enslaved forever. The debt would never be paid because it wasn't meant to be paid. Isabella, I want to help you, Jake said. But I need you to be honest. With me. Is there anything else I should know? Anyone else who might come looking? Isabella shook her head. Just Victor and his men. I no tell you because I no want to bring danger to you. You seem like good man. Jake looked at this brave young woman who'd risked everything for freedom. Something in his chest stirred, a feeling he hadn't had in years. During his time in the military, he'd failed to protect people who counted on him. Good people had died because he hadn't been fast enough, smart enough, strong enough. But here was a chance to do something right. To protect someone who desperately needed protection. Isabella, he said, I want you to listen to me carefully. You're safe here. I won't let anyone take you. Do you understand? Isabella's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they seemed like tears of relief. You mean this? You really help me? I mean it, Jake said firmly. But we need to be smart about this. These men you're talking about, they're not going to give up easy. If we're going to keep you safe, we need to do more than just hide you. What? You mean? Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. He'd spent his whole adult life solving problems, first in the military and then running his ranch. This was just another problem that needed solving, but the stakes were higher than anything he'd faced before. I mean, we're going to make you untouchable, he said finally. These men think they own you, but they're wrong. Nobody owns you. You're a free person, and we're going to make sure the law sees it that way. Isabella didn't fully understand what Jake meant, but she could hear the determination in his voice. For the first time in months, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. But how? She asked. Jake smiled for the first time that morning. Leave that to me. First thing we need to do is get you properly cleaned up and find you some better clothes. Then we're going to start making you disappear. In a good way. Outside, the sun was fully up now, painting the Texas sky in brilliant blues and golds. Jake looked out the window at his ranch, his sanctuary. It was about to become something more, a fortress, and he was going to make sure that when Victor and his men came looking, they'd find something they weren't expecting. They'd find a young woman who was no longer afraid, no longer alone, and no longer theirs to take. The first part of Isabella's transformation had begun, and Jake was determined to see it through to the end. Whatever it took, however long it took, he was going to keep his promise. Nobody was going to take Isabella Morales, not on his watch. 3 days had passed since Isabella arrived at the Double R Ranch, and Jake was learning just how deep the danger ran. Every night she woke up screaming from nightmares. During the day, any sudden noise made her jump like a frightened deer. But slowly, she was starting to trust him. Jake had given her the guest room in his house and bought her new clothes from town. He told anyone who asked that his cousin was visiting from out of state. It wasn't a perfect cover story, but it would work for now. On the third evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Isabella finally told him the whole truth about what she'd escaped from. There were 12 of us girls in that house, she said quietly. Some from Guatemala like me, others from Honduras, El Salvador. We work in fields during day picking vegetables. No pay, just small amount of food. If we get sick, too bad. If we complain, they beat us. Jake's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his voice calm. How long were you there? 8 months. Some girls, they there for years. Victor tell us if we try to run, he kill our families back home. He know where they live. Is that true? Does he really know? Isabella nodded sadly. He show us pictures. My little brother playing in our village, my mama at the market, he not lying. Jake understood now why running away had been so hard for her. These criminals didn't just threaten the people they trafficked. They threatened their loved ones too. Isabella, I need to ask you something important. Do you think Victor is still looking for you? Yes, she said without hesitation. He lose money when girls run away. And he no like when people think they can beat him. He will look until he find me. That night, Jake lay awake thinking. He'd made a promise to protect Isabella, but he was starting to understand just how dangerous that promise was. Victor wasn't just some local criminal. He was part of a larger network. People like that had resources, connections, and they didn't give up easy. The next morning, Jake drove into town to see Sheriff Maria Santos. He'd known Maria for 10 years, ever since she'd moved to their small Texas community. She was tough, fair, and most importantly, she could be trusted. "Jake," Maria said as he walked into her office, "what brings you by?" "I need to talk to you about something serious, Maria. And I need to know it stays between us." Maria's expression grew concerned. "What's going on?" Jake had thought carefully about how much to tell her. Too little, and she couldn't help. Too much, and she might feel obligated to do things by the book, which could put Isabella in danger. "There's a young woman staying at my ranch. She's running from some very bad people, human traffickers." Maria leaned forward. "Jake, are you telling me you're harboring a trafficking victim?" "I'm telling you I'm protecting someone who asked for help." Maria was quiet for a long moment. "You know I have to report this, right? There are procedures." "Maria," Jake interrupted. "If you report this through normal channels, word might get back to the wrong people. This girl will disappear and we'll never see her again. She'll end up back with people who will hurt her. Or worse. So what are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to give me some time. Let me figure out a way to make her safe legally. In the meantime, if you hear about any strangers asking questions around town, I'd appreciate a heads up." Maria studied Jake's face. She'd known him long enough to know he wasn't the type to get involved in anything shady. If he said this girl needed protection, she probably did. "How much time are we talking about?" "A few weeks. Maybe a month." "And what's your plan?" Jake had been thinking about that all night. "I'm going to make her legitimate. Get her legal status, create a paper trail that shows she belongs here. Make it so these traffickers can't touch her even if they find her. You know that's not easy, right? Immigration law is complicated." "I know, but I have to try." Maria nodded slowly. "All right, Jake. I'll give you some time. But if this gets out of hand, if people get hurt, I'll have to step in." "I understand." That afternoon, Jake made another important phone call. Danny Chen had been his buddy in the military, and after getting out, Danny had gone to law school. Now he specialized in immigration cases in Houston. "Jake." Danny's voice was warm over the phone. "How's the cowboy life treating you?" "It's good, Danny. Listen, I need a favor, a legal favor." "I'm listening." Jake explained the situation, being careful not to give too many details over the phone. Danny listened without interrupting. "This is serious stuff, Jake," Danny said when he finished. "Human trafficking cases are federal crimes. If this girl testifies, she might qualify for a T visa. That's for trafficking victims. But the process can take years, and in the meantime, she's vulnerable." "What about other options?" "Well, there are a few possibilities. Asylum if she can prove she'd be in danger if she went back to Guatemala, but that's also a long process. Or," Danny paused. "This might sound crazy, but what about guardianship?" "What do you mean?" "If she's under 21 and if she has no family here, you could potentially become her legal guardian. It would give her immediate protection under law, and it would create documentation showing she has legitimate status here." Jake felt a spark of hope. "How would that work?" "You'd have to petition the court, show that you can provide for her, that you have no criminal background, that sort of thing. The fact that you're a veteran and an established business owner would help." "But Jake, this is a big step. Legal guardianship is serious business." "I understand. I can help you with the paperwork, but you need to think about this carefully. Are you ready to be responsible for this girl's future?" Jake looked out the window toward the barn where Isabella was feeding the horses. Over the past few days, he'd watched her slowly come back to life. She smiled more each day. She was learning English words from him, and he was picking up some Spanish from her. She had a quick mind and a brave heart. "Yeah," Jake said. I'm ready. That evening, Jake sat Isabella down to explain his plan. I want to become your legal guardian, he said carefully. It would mean that in the eyes of the law, you're under my protection. No one could take you away without going through me first. Isabella looked confused. Guardian? Like father? Not exactly like a father, but similar. It would give you legal status here. It would make you safe. But why you do this for? Me? You don't even know me. Jake was quiet for a moment. He thought about his time in the military, about the people he hadn't been able to save, about the guilt he'd carried for years. Sometimes you get a chance to do something right, he said finally. This feels right. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. But what if Victor find out? What if he hurt you? Let me worry about Victor, Jake said. You just focus on getting stronger and learning. We're going to beat these people, Isabella, but we're going to do it the right way. That night, as Jake started researching guardianship laws online, he heard Isabella moving around in the guest room. But this time, it wasn't because of nightmares. Through the thin walls, he could hear her practicing English words, repeating phrases he'd taught her that day. She was preparing for her new life, just like he was preparing to defend it. Outside, the Texas night was peaceful and quiet, but Jake knew that wouldn't last. Victor and his men were out there somewhere searching, and when they came, Jake intended to be ready. The paperwork was just the beginning. Isabella needed to be more than just legally protected. She needed to be strong enough to face whatever came next, and Jake was going to make sure she was ready. 2 weeks later, Jake stood in the courthouse holding a stack of papers that would change everything. The judge had approved his petition for guardianship of Isabella Morales, who was now officially Isabella Richardson. She had a new last name, a social security number, and most importantly, legal protection under Texas law. But Jake knew paperwork alone wouldn't stop Victor and his men. They needed to build something stronger than legal documents. They needed to build a fortress of community, skills, and preparation. From now on, Jake told Isabella as they drove home from the courthouse, you're not just hiding here. You're living here. This is your home and you're going to learn everything you need to know to defend it. Isabella looked at the official papers in her hands. I still cannot believe this is real. I have new name, new life. But Jake, I am scared. What if Victor no care about papers? That's why we're not stopping with papers, Jake said. We're going to make you so much a part of this community, so established here, that it would be impossible for anyone to just take you away. The first step was making Isabella an essential part of the ranch operation. Jake had been running the Double R alone since his divorce 5 years earlier, and honestly, he could use the help. You're going to learn everything, he told her. Cattle management, horseback riding, equipment maintenance, bookkeeping. By the time we're done, this ranch won't be able to run without you. Isabella was eager to learn. Every morning at sunrise, Jake found her already in the barn ready to start work. She had a natural way with the animals. The horses seemed to calm down around her, and even the ornery bull that gave Jake trouble would let her walk right up to him. In Guatemala, my family have small farm, she explained as she brushed down a mare. I grow up with animals. I miss this very much. Jake started teaching her to ride. Isabella was nervous at first. The horses on the ranch were much bigger than anything she'd worked with back home. But Jake was patient, and Isabella was determined. Keep your back straight, Jake called out as Isabella guided her horse around the practice ring. Let the horse feel that you're confident even if you're not. I try, Isabella called back, gripping the reins a little too tightly. Relax your hands. The horse knows when you're tense. After an hour of practice, Isabella climbed down from the horse, her legs shaky but her face glowing with pride. I did it, she said. I really did it, Jake smiled. You did great. Tomorrow we'll work on galloping. Galloping? Isabella's eyes went wide. That no sound very safe. Trust me, by the time I'm done training you, you'll be able to outride anyone who tries to chase you. That wasn't just a figure of speech. Jake was thinking ahead to every possible scenario. If Victor and his men did find the ranch, Isabella needed to be able to escape on horseback if necessary. The Double R had 10,000 acres, and there were places in the backcountry where a skilled rider could hide for days. But riding was just one skill Isabella needed to learn. Jake also started teaching her basic self-defense. "I no want to hurt people," Isabella protested during their first lesson. "I don't want you to hurt people either," Jake said. "But I want you to be able to protect yourself if you have to. There's a difference." Jake had learned hand-to-hand combat in the military, and he taught Isabella simple, effective moves. How to break free if someone grabbed her wrist, how to use her knee to disable an attacker, how to run in a way that made her harder to catch. "The goal is never to fight," Jake explained. "The goal is to get away, but if you can't get away, you need to know how to buy yourself time." Isabella was a quick learner. She was small, but she was fast and smart. After a few weeks of practice, Jake felt confident that she could handle herself if she had to. But the most important part of building Isabella's fortress wasn't physical, it was social. Jake started introducing her around town as his ward, creating connections and relationships that would be hard for anyone to break. Their first stop was the local diner, where Jake introduced Isabella to Betty, the owner who'd been serving coffee and pie in their small town for 30 years. "This is Isabella," Jake said. "She's going to be helping me run the ranch." Betty looked Isabella up and down with the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen everything. "Well, honey, any friend of Jake's is a friend of mine. You ever work in a restaurant before?" "Little bit," Isabella said carefully. Her English was getting better every day, but she still felt nervous talking to new people. "I could use some weekend help if you're interested. Jake here tells me you're a hard worker." Isabella looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. I would like that very much." By the end of the month, Isabella was working weekends at the diner, and half the town knew her by name. She was becoming part of the fabric of the community, just like Jake had planned. Jake also introduced her to Father Miguel at the local Catholic church. Isabella had been raised Catholic, and Jake thought she might find comfort in attending services. "Welcome, my child," Father Miguel said warmly. "Jake tells me you're from Guatemala. I spent 2 years doing missionary work in Central America when I was younger." Isabella's face lit up when Father Miguel started speaking Spanish with her. For the first time since arriving in America, she could express herself fully in her native language. "She's been through some difficult times," Jake explained to the priest privately. "She's safe now, but she might need someone to talk to. Someone who understands where she comes from." Father Miguel nodded. "I understand. The church doors are always open to her." Jake also reached out to his network of military friends. 3 other veterans lived within 50 miles of the ranch, and Jake called each of them. "I need you guys to keep your ears open," he told them. "If you hear about anyone asking questions about a young Hispanic woman, or if you notice any strangers hanging around town, let me know immediately." His friend Tommy, who ran an auto repair shop, was particularly helpful. "You need anything, Jake? Extra security, someone to keep watch, anything, you just call." Jake even spoke to Dr. Patricia Williams, the local doctor who'd patched him up after a bull riding accident a few years back. "If Isabella ever needs medical care, I want you to be ready," he told her. "And if anyone ever comes asking questions about her medical records, I need you to call me first." Dr. Williams raised an eyebrow. "Jake, what exactly are you protecting?" "This girl from bad people who want to hurt her. That's all you need to know." As the weeks passed, Isabella grew stronger and more confident. She could now ride any horse on the ranch, handle most of the daily chores, and carry on conversations in English with anyone in town. She'd even started helping Betty with the diner's bookkeeping, showing an aptitude for numbers that surprised everyone. But the most important change was in Isabella herself. The frightened, broken girl who'd collapsed in Jake's barn was gone. In her place was a young woman who stood up straight, looked people in the eye, and spoke with growing confidence. "I feel like a different person," Isabella told Jake one evening, as they sat on the porch. "Like the girl in Guatemala was someone else." "You're still the same person," Jake said. "You just remember now who you really are." Sometimes I think about Victor finding me and I no feel scared anymore. I feel angry. How dare he think he owned me? Jake smiled. That was exactly what he'd been hoping to hear, but their peace wouldn't last much longer. The next morning, Sheriff Santos called with news that made Jake's blood run cold. Jake, you need to know, there are 3 men in town asking questions. They're showing around a picture of a young Hispanic woman. They claim she stole money from them and they want her back. Jake felt his heart rate spike. What did you tell them? Nothing. But Jake, they're not going away. They're staying at the motel, and they're talking to everyone in town. Someone's going to mention Isabella eventually. Jake looked out the window where Isabella was training a young horse, completely unaware that the danger she'd been running from had finally caught up to them. The fortress they'd built was about to be tested, and Jake prayed it would be strong enough to hold. Jake hung up the phone and immediately called Isabella inside. She took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. They're here, aren't they? She said quietly. 3 men showed up in town this morning asking questions. They have your picture. Isabella's face went pale, but she didn't crumble like she would have months ago. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. What do we do? We stick to the plan, Jake said. But first I need to make some calls. Within an hour, Jake's network was mobilized. Tommy closed his auto shop and drove out to the ranch. Father Miguel arranged for several church members to happen to be in town that day, keeping an eye on the 3 strangers. Dr. Williams made sure she was available if needed. And Sheriff Santos positioned herself where she could respond quickly to any trouble. You sure about this, Jake? Tommy asked as they checked the ranch's security cameras. We could just spirit her away to my cousin's place in Oklahoma until this blows over. No, Jake said firmly. We're not running anymore. Isabella has every right to be here, and we're going to prove it. Danny, Jake's lawyer friend, had driven up from Houston that morning with a briefcase full of documents. He spread them out on Jake's kitchen table like battle plans. Legal guardianship papers, signed by a judge, Danny said, tapping each document. Immigration lawyer consultation notes. Isabella's employment records from the ranch and the diner. Bank account statements showing regular paychecks. Even a letter from Father Miguel confirming her church attendance. Isabella looked at the papers with amazement. All this is really about me? This is proof that you belong here, Danny explained. That you're not some runaway they can just drag back. You're Isabella Richardson now, with a legal guardian, a job, a home, and a community that knows you. Jake's phone rang. It was Sheriff Santos. They're heading your way, Jake. 3 men in a black SUV. They left town about 10 minutes ago. We're ready, Jake said. Isabella took a deep breath. I am scared, but I am also ready. These men, they cannot hurt me anymore. 20 minutes later, the black SUV pulled up to the ranch house. Jake, Isabella, Danny, Tommy, and Sheriff Santos were waiting on the porch. Jake had positioned everyone carefully. Sheriff Santos in uniform, Danny with his briefcase clearly visible, Tommy looking like exactly what he was, a tough veteran who wouldn't back down from a fight. 3 men got out of the SUV. The leader was exactly as Isabella had described, a man with a scar on his cheek and cold, dangerous eyes. This was Victor. Good afternoon, Victor said with a fake smile. We're looking for someone, a young woman who owes us money. He held up a photograph. It was definitely Isabella, but it was an old picture, the frightened, broken girl from months ago. The confident young woman standing on the porch looked like a completely different person. I'm Sheriff Santos, Maria said, stepping forward. And you are? Victor Ruiz, the man said. These are my associates. We're looking for this girl, Isabella Morales. We have reason to believe she's hiding on this property. What kind of reason? Sheriff Santos asked. She stole money from us. Ran away in the middle of the night. We just want what's ours. Jake spoke up for the first time. Sheriff, I'd like you to meet my ward, Isabella Richardson. Isabella stepped forward. 3 months of good food, hard work, and feeling safe had transformed her completely. She stood tall, made eye contact, and spoke clearly. My name is Isabella Richardson. I live here with my guardian, Jake Richardson. I work at this ranch and at Betty's Diner in town. Victor's eyes narrowed. That's her. That's Isabella Morales. She belongs to us. Nobody belongs to you, Isabella said firmly. I am free person. I choose to live here. Danny opened his briefcase. Gentlemen, I'm Mr. Chen, Ms. Richardson's attorney. I have here legal documentation showing that Ms. Richardson is the legal ward of Mr. Jake Richardson, a respected member of this community. She has employment authorization, a social security number, and full legal status in this state. Victor looked at the papers with growing anger. I don't care about your papers. She owes us money, a lot of money. What money? Sheriff Santos asked. Transportation costs, housing, food. We brought her to America, and she needs to pay us back. That sounds like human trafficking to me, Sheriff Santos said coldly. It's a legitimate business debt, Victor insisted. Isabella spoke up again, her voice stronger than before. You want to talk about debt? You kidnapped me. You locked me in house with other girls. You made us work for no pay. You beat us when we complained. You threatened to kill our families. She's lying, one of Victor's men said. Am I? Isabella pulled out her phone, a new one Jake had bought her, and opened up a recording app. I recorded myself telling my story to FBI agent Rodriguez in Houston last week. Every detail, names, places, faces. Everything I remember about your operation. Victor's face went dark with rage. You little... That's enough, Sheriff Santos said, her hand moving to her weapon. Mr. Ruiz, you and your friends need to leave. Now. We're not leaving without her, Victor said. Yes, you are, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see a man in a suit walking up from a car that had just arrived. He flashed a badge. Special Agent Williams, FBI. Mr. Ruiz, you're under arrest for human trafficking. More FBI agents emerged from vehicles that had quietly surrounded the ranch. Victor and his men found themselves looking down the barrels of multiple weapons. Victor Ruiz, Agent Williams continued, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, forced labor, and about a dozen other federal crimes. Thanks to Ms. Richardson's testimony and the evidence she's provided, we've been building a case against your organization for weeks. As the FBI agents handcuffed Victor and his men, Victor glared at Isabella with pure hatred. This isn't over, girl. We have people everywhere. We'll find you. Isabella stepped closer to him, her chin raised defiantly. No, you will not, because I am not alone anymore. I have family now. I have community. I have law on my side, and I am not afraid of you. Victor was led away in handcuffs, still muttering threats. But his words had no power anymore. The fortress that Jake had helped Isabella build had held strong. After the FBI agents left with their prisoners, the group sat on the porch in stunned silence. Is it really over? Isabella asked. Agent Williams, who had stayed behind to wrap up paperwork, nodded. With your testimony and the evidence we've gathered, Victor and his organization are going away for a very long time. You're safe, Ms. Richardson. Isabella looked around at the people who had stood with her. Jake, who had risked everything to protect her. Sheriff Santos, who had bent the rules to help. Danny, who had worked tirelessly on her legal status. Tommy, who had dropped everything to be there. And even Betty from the diner, who had arrived just as the arrests were happening. I cannot believe this is real, she said, tears streaming down her face. 3 months ago, I think I'm going to die. Now I have new life, new family. Jake put his arm around her shoulders. You did this, Isabella. You were brave enough to run, brave enough to ask for help, and brave enough to fight back. All I did was give you a safe place to remember who you really are. As the sun set over the Double R Ranch, Isabella looked out at the land that had become her home. Tomorrow she would wake up as a free woman with a future full of possibilities. She was going to finish her GED, maybe go to college. She wanted to study social work, to help other people who had been through what she'd experienced. The frightened girl who had collapsed in Jake's barn was gone forever. In her place stood Isabella Richardson, daughter, friend, survivor, and fighter, and absolutely, completely untouchable. 1 year later, Isabella stood at the podium in the state capitol building, looking out at a room full of lawmakers, advocates, and survivors. She wore a simple blue dress and the silver necklace Jake had given her for her 20th birthday. Her hands were steady as she adjusted the microphone. "My name is Isabella Richardson," she began, her voice clear and confident. "3 years ago, I was trafficked from Guatemala to Texas. Today, I want to tell you why we need stronger laws to protect survivors like me." In the audience, Jake sat in the front row, his chest swelling with pride. Next to him sat Sheriff Santos, Danny the lawyer, Betty from the diner, and Father Miguel. Even Tommy had driven down from the ranch to hear Isabella speak. "When I first escaped," Isabella continued, "I had nothing. No papers, no money, no friends, no family. I was terrified and alone, but I was lucky enough to find people who believed that every human being deserves to be free." Isabella told her story to the hushed room. She spoke about the fake promises that had lured her to America, the horrible conditions she'd endured, and her desperate escape. But she also talked about the network of people who had helped her rebuild her life. "My guardian, Jake Richardson, didn't just give me a place to hide," she said. "He gave me the tools to fight back: legal status, job skills, education, and most importantly, a community that accepted me as family." After Victor's arrest, Isabella's life had changed rapidly. The FBI's investigation had led to the rescue of dozens of other trafficking victims and the shutdown of several criminal operations. Isabella's testimony had been crucial in securing convictions, but more than that, her story had inspired new legislation. The Isabella Richardson Act, as it came to be known, would streamline the process for trafficking survivors to gain legal status and would provide funding for guardian programs like the one Jake had created. "Education saved my life," Isabella told the lawmakers. "When I got my GED, it proved to myself that I was smart and capable. When I started college, I learned that my experiences, painful as they were, could help other people." Isabella was now in her second year studying social work at the state university. She lived in a dorm during the week, but always came home to the ranch on weekends. Jake had worried she might want to leave Texas behind entirely, but Isabella had surprised him. "This is my home now," she told him. "These are my people. Why would I leave?" The Double R Ranch had changed too. What had started as one man's mission to protect one girl had grown into something much bigger. The Isabella Richardson Foundation now operated safe houses on 3 different ranches across Texas, providing temporary shelter and job training for trafficking survivors. Jake had discovered he had a talent for this work. His military background and ranching skills made him good at creating safe, structured environments where traumatized people could heal. But it was Isabella who had taught him how to really connect with survivors, how to help them find their strength again. "The foundation has helped 43 people so far," Isabella told the lawmakers. 43 people who now have jobs, homes, families, and futures. But there are thousands more who need help. After her speech, Isabella was surrounded by reporters and advocates. She handled their questions with the same poise she brought to everything now. Jake watched from a distance, remembering the terrified girl who had begged him not to let them take her. "Mr. Richardson?" A reporter approached him. "Can I ask you what motivated you to help Isabella in the first place?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "Sometimes you meet someone who reminds you why you're here," he said finally. "Isabella reminded me that protecting people isn't just a job, it's a calling." Later that evening, back at the ranch, Isabella and Jake sat on the porch like they had so many times before. The Texas sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors and the cattle grazed peacefully in the distance. "Jake," Isabella said quietly, "I want to tell you something I have never said before." "What's that?" "Thank you. Not just for helping me, but for seeing me. When I came here, I was broken. I thought I was worthless, that I deserved what happened to me. You helped me remember that I was a person, not a thing." Jake was quiet for a moment. "You know what you taught me?" "What?" "That saving one person can change everything. When I helped you, I thought I was just doing the right thing. I didn't know it would lead to all this." He gestured toward the foundation's office building they'd constructed on the ranch. You turned your pain into purpose, Isabella. That's not something I taught you, that came from inside you. Isabella smiled. Maybe we saved each other. The next morning brought news that made their victory even sweeter. Agent Williams called to tell them that Victor had been sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. His entire organization had been dismantled, and investigators had identified trafficking networks in 6 other states. It's the biggest human trafficking bust in Texas history, Agent Williams told them. And it all started with one brave girl who refused to give up. But for Isabella, the most meaningful moments weren't the big victories. They were the small daily reminders that she was free. Like Saturday mornings when she helped Betty at the diner, chatting with regular customers who knew her story and treated her like family. Like Sunday services with Father Miguel, where she now helped teach Sunday school to kids whose parents were recent immigrants. Like evenings when she tutored other survivors in English and math, watching them gain confidence, the same way she had. I used to think freedom meant just not being trapped, Isabella told a new arrival at the foundation. But real freedom is knowing you belong somewhere, that people care about you, that you have choices about your future. The girl she was talking to, Rosa, recently rescued from a factory where she'd been forced to work 18-hour days, looked at Isabella with the same desperate hope that Isabella had once looked at Jake. You really think I can have a normal life? Rosa asked. Not normal, Isabella said with a smile. Better than normal, because now you know how precious freedom is. You'll never take it for granted. As Isabella showed Rosa around the ranch, explaining the programs and introducing her to the staff, Jake watched from the office window. 5 years ago, he'd been a lonely rancher trying to find meaning in his life. Now he was part of something that mattered, surrounded by people who had become family. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was another law enforcement agency, asking if the foundation could take in 3 more survivors. Of course, Jake said. We always have room. Because that was the truth Isabella had taught him. There was always room for one more person who needed protection, one more chance to do the right thing, one more opportunity to prove that ordinary people could create extraordinary change. Outside, Isabella was teaching Rosa how to ride a horse, just like Jake had taught her years ago. Rosa was nervous, gripping the reins too tightly, but Isabella was patient and encouraging. Relax, Isabella called out. Let the horse feel that you're confident, even if you're not. Jake smiled, recognizing his own words. The cycle was continuing, survivors helping other survivors, each person passing on the strength they'd found to the next person who needed it. That evening, Isabella called her mother in Guatemala using the video chat app on her computer. Her family had been so afraid when she first disappeared, and so amazed when she contacted them months later to tell them she was safe. Mija, her mother said, tears in her eyes. You look so strong now, so happy. I am happy, Mama. And I'm coming. To visit next month, I want you to meet Jake. He's been like a father to me here. I cannot wait to thank this man who saved my daughter. After the call ended, Isabella found Jake in the barn, checking on a mare who was about to give birth. Jake, I want to ask you something. Shoot. Next year, when I graduate from college, I want to expand the foundation. I want to help survivors not just in Texas, but across the whole country, maybe even internationally. Jake looked at the young woman who had once been afraid to speak above a whisper. Now she was dreaming of changing the world. That sounds like a pretty big goal, he said. Yes, it is. But you taught me that the biggest changes start with one person helping another person. We just have to do it one person at a time, one ranch at a time, one life at a time. Jake nodded. Well then, we'd better get started. As they walked back to the house together, Isabella looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, other people were still trapped, still scared, still hoping for rescue. But now there were people like Jake, like Sheriff Santos, like Danny, like Betty. Ordinary people willing to do extraordinary things. And there were survivors like Isabella, who understood that freedom wasn't just about escaping from something terrible. It was about running towards something beautiful. The ranch was quiet now, peaceful and safe. But it was also ready. Ready to shelter the next person who needed protection. Ready to prove once again that when good people decide to act, even the most powerful criminals can be defeated. Isabella Richardson had learned that she was untouchable, not because she was hidden away from the world, but because she had become so much a part of it that removing her would be impossible. She belonged here. She mattered here. She was loved here. And that, she knew, was the strongest fortress of all.